Normally, I think it's reckless to say this, but not today. TCU season is already a disappointment, and that's per Sonny Dykes. Oh, yeah, it's locked on Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the mouth of the South. 817 Raised, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Now, we're going to close out today's segments with a pair of PFF-assisted topics. One looking at the safety duo of Bud Clark and Jamel Johnson, and another at the wasted talent on Saturday of Eric McAllister and Kevorian Barnes. I would say that both of those segments revolve around the theme of desiring more, the same as our opening segment. I don't know a TCU fan who did not desire more from this year's season. Now, you have to understand, I came in after that North Carolina game. The preseason chatter wasn't something I was overly privy to. But after that North Carolina game, after the hype of beating Bill Belichick-led Tar Heels, I know that we don't look at them as being a great team, but I think we would all be in agreement that it was very hype at that moment. It felt like everything was ready to turn around. You had all of the pieces to be a playoff team. But the fact that TCU is not going to be a playoff team, I feel comfortable saying that already. I feel comfortable saying that. So with my comfort, I can declare this season a disappointment. You can go get the coroner. You can start writing up the medical reports. Time of death was Saturday. What was Saturday? 13, 12, 11. October 11th, approximately 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's what I say. Go write the medical report. The body is getting cold. TCU season officially became a disappointment on Saturday. And no, this is not by my standard. This is by Sonny Dykes' standards. I don't think if you asked him right now if the season was a disappointment that he would say yes. But if you reflect upon what he said in, let's see, April, this is a disappointing season. It's going to be very hard to shake that. I don't think that they'll be able to. Now, normally I say it's way too early to say that because it's only mid-October. Like today is October 14th. It is extremely early to say that it is a disappointing season for most teams around the country. However, TCU set a standard. Sonny Dykes in April set a standard. He set a bar of where TCU needs to be in order for it to not be a disappointing season. And you could play limbo standing up underneath that quite comfortably because I think that TCU is failing to become a playoff team. I don't think that they suffered their last loss of the season on Saturday. And I can comfortably say, by Sonny Dykes' standards, this is a disappointing season because, and this comes from Steven Johnson, it's a tweet, quote, Dykes says the standard in year 4 is competing for a Big 12 title and college football playoff berth. Said winning 9 games last year was nice, but a similar year would be disappointing in 25 if TCU isn't contending for a spot in Arlington. I emphasized a couple of words there. Competing, Big 12 title, college football berth, football playoff berth, and similar. Those are the key words in all of this. And this is one of the things about frustrating losses that as a content creator is kind of great because when you have big losses or big wins, they tend to be great for a content ideation because everybody feels passionately about both of those sides of the coin. But then also you get people having rage tweets where I would have never found this. I didn't go looking for this. I didn't. Somebody posted that on Twitter and I liked the tweet. I said, oh my gosh, this is a clear segment to talk about. We were going to do it on Monday, but then the James Franklin business happened. I said, all right, let's push it on to Tuesday. And I like that. TCU could play limbo, standing up underneath the bar that they set for themselves in 2025. That's how disappointing this season already is. The words that I highlight in Coach Dykes' comments are competing for a Big 12 title in college football berth, and then winning 9 games last year was nice, but a similar year would be disappointing. Those are the phrases that stick out to me. I don't think either one of those things are going the way that he planned it. At 2 losses, I do not believe that you are going to be competing for a Big 12 championship. I do not believe that you are going to be competing for a college football berth. Matter of fact, having 2 losses already means the only way that you're going to make it to the college football playoffs is by winning the Big 12. And unfortunately, they got some heavy hitters above you that I don't know if I feel confident saying that they're going to lose 2 games. And I feel even less confident to say that you're not going to lose again because you can't handle hostile environments. You didn't handle it in Arizona State. You didn't handle it in Kansas State. What's to make me think that you could go play BYU in hostile environment and come out with a victory? What is making me say that? Right? Like you go through it. Let's see. Right now, TCU is at 4 wins on the season. They're 4-2 through 6 games. That's halfway. Mid-October, way too early to call a season a disappointment. But if I now know what the bar is, I can say that. Winning 9 games last year was nice, but a similar, that's important, similar, not the same. I'm not saying, well, they're going to surpass 9 games. That's not enough. You need to surpass 9 games. You need to be competing and contending for a spot in Arlington. We're looking at Big 12 championship aspirations. All right, 4-2 right now. You got Baylor at home this week. Baylor comes up. You lose to Baylor, it's going to be a lot of heavier conversations, a lot of conversations that are being sprinkled out there, like, just murmurs and murmurs. They're going to become loud. They're going to be vocalized. You're going to see people with megaphones screaming things into the megaphone, right? Like that's what you're going to have if you lose to Baylor. But anyway, you got Baylor at home, West Virginia on the road, Iowa State at home, BYU on the road, Houston on the road, and then Cincinnati at home. What is to make me say that you're going to go out there and beat Baylor in Baylor? Or excuse me, what's going to make me say you're going to beat BYU in BYU? What's to make me think when you have Baylor, Iowa State, BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston? I'm sorry, West Virginia. Mountaineer Paul, you're going to have to forgive me. We'll talk next week. But you have those 5 games. What's to make me think you're going to go? What's going to make me think you're going to go 5-0 in those matchups? What's going to make me think you're going to go 4-0? 4-1. Like I when I start breaking it down, I look at how TCU has been performing. I can't help but question 9 wins last year, 6 games left this year. You might hit 10, right? Like if you go through all 6 of the matchups, not just the ones I'm highlighting, I do think you beat West Virginia, even though that's on the road. If you lose that game, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. But anyway, 6 games left. Maybe you go 4-2. Maybe go 5-1. I don't think you run the table the rest of the year. I really don't. And I think if you do, then we change how we talk about this because now you heat it up towards the end of the year. But you go 5-1, you go 9 wins in the regular season, maybe you get a bowl game victory. That is similar to last year's results, where you had 8 wins in the regular season and then you won a bowl game to make it 9. So maybe it's a step up. It's not exactly what you did last year, but it's not competing for a Big 12 title. It's not getting you a college football berth. I think running the table and going 10-2 in the regular season could have you close. It could have you going into the last week questioning. But you lose to Baylor. You lose to Iowa State. You lose to BYU. You lose any of those games. You're not going into the last 2 weeks of the season thinking, well, if this bounces that way, I might be able to. No. Teams like Tech, they're already there. Teams like Utah, teams like Arizona State already beat you, and we're going to have conversations about that with Sarah tomorrow where we talk about Iowa State. I think I'm going to, and I may talk about Arizona State. I'm not sure yet. It's up in the air, but we're going to do our Big 12 winners and losers. Should be a lot of fun. And what stinks about this whole thing is that I feel like they're wasting a really good opportunity for the Big 12 to have 2 teams and you to be one of them. I genuinely feel like the Big 12 is going to have 2 college football playoff representatives. And when you lost to Arizona State, you still held the right to be one of those other teams. You still had the right to fight for a playoff spot as an at-large or as an automatic bid. Last year, it was Notre Dame, a G5, 3 SEC schools, 4 Big Ten schools, 2 ACC schools, and a Big 12 school. Notre Dame is gone. Who's going to fill that spot? I think it could be another Big Ten team or Big 12 team. I think that the Big Ten is going to have 3 teams make it instead of 4. I think you're going to see Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State make it. I think that's it. So you have 3 teams from the Big Ten. 4, the SEC is crazy right now. The SEC is absolutely ballistic. You have a bunch of teams who are just kind of like in the mix. So right now you have LSU, you have Alabama, you have Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Tennessee. This week is going to tell a lot in a multitude of conferences. It's going to tell a lot for TCU. They lose to Baylor or they beat Baylor. It's going to say a lot for them. LSU plays, I just looked at this a second ago. They play Vanderbilt this week, who's 17. I think Tennessee plays Alabama this week. Yeah, they play Alabama this week. Ole Miss and Texas A&M, they're just shaky to me. I just don't trust that both of them will make it. I just don't. They don't have a history of that as you look into it. You go to the ACC, and you got some teams up there at the top of the ACC, more than I thought that they would. But Virginia's lost to North Carolina State already. I think even if they make it, they fall to Miami, and I don't think they make it to the college football playoffs. If they make it to the ACC championship, and fall to Miami, I don't think they make it to the college football playoffs. SMU already has 2 out-of-conference losses. If they don't win the conference, I don't think they make it. You look at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, now they're good, okay? They don't play Miami during the regular season. They play Duke this week, though, and Duke is another undefeated conference team in the ACC. Then you got Syracuse, North Carolina State, Boston College, Pitt, Georgia. Oh, they play Georgia. Oh, that Georgia game gonna change a lot. Like you start looking at the ACC and you like, man, I don't know if they're gonna get 2. They might get 2, but I don't know if they get 2. I could reasonably see the ACC getting 1 team in the college football playoffs this year. That's a drop from 2. Notre Dame is not going to make it unless something absolutely ballistic happens, and it feels like a lot of crazy things are happening right now. That's 2 teams out. I think that you could swap the SEC and Big Ten, so I'm just going to change that over and say nothing else happened. But that's 2 teams down. That's 2 spots that could be taken. And the Big 12 is probably going to take at least one of them. And I think that TCU had a chance to be, and they wasted that. And I know that pours a little bit of salt in the wound, but that's how I look at it. That's the most disappointing part of it, is not only did you fail to live up to your own standard, you failed to take advantage of an opportunity that was placed right in front of you. Now, as we push forward, we're going to take a look at one of the gross misusages from this season, and that is Kevorian Barnes and Eric McAllister's touches against Kansas State on Saturday. Some understandable, some not. But we're going to break into all of that as we continue with today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Now, the holidays are going to be here before you know it, and that's pretty exciting in my opinion, but your home getting ready for guests can be stressful. Celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe your serveware needs a refresh, or the guest room could use new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready. From Christmas trees, yeah, they have those, to wreaths and bedding and cookware and outdoor inflatables if you want to have fun that way, right? Like, it's all there. It's your one-stop shop for everything in every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every style and budget, and with free and easy. I love the word free, and I love the word easy. Delivery. Even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. Get ready for the holidays, whether you're doing a Thanksgiving, a Friendsgiving, a white elephant, or maybe you're just somewhere where you have a white Christmas. You want to have Wayfair to decorate your theme for the holidays. Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thursday, we have a game between the Bengals and the Steelers. That should be interesting. Don't know how fun it'll be, but I know what is fun. Making money on games that you don't care about. I don't like betting on games I care about. But games I don't care about, Yeah, bring that over here. So you go ahead and go to FanDuel for all of the matchups that you want to put some money on. You feel like you know about, whether it's Jamar Chase's yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers, or maybe it's just the odds, the spread on this, or maybe it's just the head up bet. Whatever your cup of tea is, make sure that you pour it for yourself. All you have to do is go to FanDuel. That's it. And if you do it, and excuse me, if you're new, you get $300 back in bonus bets when you put down a $5 bet that wins. Go to FanDuel.com right now to make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Big 12, and we're close to having our Big 12 squad show, so you're not going to want to miss that either. I'm going to try to make sure I join in and drive a little bit more TCU content for you and kind of speak about the changing landscape of the conference, whether that's James Franklin. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Whether that's the college football playoffs, sure we'll talk about that. It's going to be interesting. I'm not sure we're going to talk about the college football playoffs. This is just me, though. This is what I would talk about if I was running a show. No, I'm joking. I thought that the misusage of Kevorian Barnes and Eric McAllister was quite disappointing. And I think that one was more understandable than the other. But both were disappointing nonetheless. And I'll start off with Kevorian Barnes, because Barnes and McAllister had the second and third best PFF grade for the Horned Frogs on Saturday, following Josh Hoover at number 1. But you're going to get Josh Hoover involved because he's every single snap. My frustration about Kevorian Barnes is not that he wasn't used later in the game, because I understand how upsetting that could be. I understand how irritating it'd be. Like, man, you're running the football well. Why you didn't keep running it? Because you were down 21 and trying to throw your way back into the game. And I do feel like you were phased out of the run. I don't think you phased out of the run. I think you were phased out of it, right? This isn't like the Arizona State. I think this was the Arizona State game in which Coach Dykes came out and said basically they had to become one-dimensional just because they couldn't run the football. After weeks of not being able to run the ball, after weeks of that being one of the bigger conversations for the team as a whole, you got to run the ball, and this is why you need Kevorian Barnes. This is why you need good blocking, because the pairing of those two aspects is what put it all together for the Horned Frogs. I really like Barnes. I've said it for a couple of weeks now at this point. I think he's extremely talented. I think he was the clear number 1 in that backfield. And in the first half, he showed it. In the first half, he showed it, man. I think he had 9 carries for like 60 yards or something like that. He finished with 12 for 81. But the problem is he didn't have a touch. He didn't have a rush late in that game. After, I think, maybe the halfway through the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that, though. You're looking at Kevorian Barnes, who his last running attempt came with 10 minutes and 28 seconds left in the third quarter. So ironically, that's not the correct time. But you know what? Yes, it is, because that's when 1st and 20 happened. But that's the same time that I said the game was over. So I guess they started giving him the touches when the game was over. But Barnes, you finally started to see the holes open up. You finally started to see good run blocking. It felt like for 2-3 weeks, TCU couldn't move anybody on the offensive front. It felt like they couldn't get any holes to open up. And I know Kevorian Barnes is a talented back, but he came back to an offensive line that was not blocking well. Saturday, they did block well. And that was probably the most disappointing thing. I probably would have wanted to see them lean into the run game a little bit more in the first half. Honestly, I would have liked to see them be a little bit more run heavy, because it felt like that's where they were finding the most success. It felt like Kevorian Barnes or Trent Battle, that's where they found their rhythm, and that was in their ability to run the football, get good situations on second and third down. That's what you want to see. And I understand the frustration. I get the pointing to, how didn't you run the football? Because you were down 21 multiple times, right? Like, you would score, they score back. Like, you were always chasing. There was no time. The clock was never your friend. The clock was always your enemy after halfway through the third quarter. So with that being the case, I can't really get too mad at Kevorian Barnes not being a big part of the last 25 minutes of the game. I think that's just a product of what happened through the first 35 minutes of the game. Now, Eric McAllister is a different story, because Coach Dykes went up there and he talked about not getting his stars involved earlier. Now, my first thought was, you didn't get your stars involved late enough thinking about Kevorian. Then I came back to reality and said, that's more so because he couldn't get him involved. But with McAllister didn't see his first catch until 9 minutes and 55 seconds left in the second quarter. At 9 minutes, 55 seconds left in the first quarter, that was the first time that McAllister was even targeted. Not a lone catch. He was not targeted for the first 20 minutes of the game. That's unacceptable. That's your top guy. And I think in that first quarter, you've seen a couple of drops. So either they were extremely sticky on him or it just didn't work. Anyway, McAllister, his day is aided by the fact that he had a 20 or a 37-yard touchdown to close out the game, and he had an 85-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. He had 2 catches for 122 yards. Like, by that time, though, the game's over. I know that first touchdown made it feel like it was close, but it wasn't. That game was over. So you didn't get Eric McAllister involved until garbage time. And yes, his stats look good at the end of the day. You have 4 catches for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a really strong performance in the stat box. But it's not that good of a performance when you break down what the game really looked like. And this was a disappointing performance by the offense because I felt like their 2 biggest stars as far as weapons go, take Josh Hoover out of it, the 2 biggest stars for TCU just didn't see the ball enough. They didn't get enough rushing attempts. They didn't get enough targets. It'd be one thing if they kept targeting McAllister, but on here, you don't see it. You just see they have one of his They have one of his targets being an interception. So I can only assume that they counted targets on this. This is the live stats for TCU. But you didn't get anything else from him. And that's a usage thing. That's coaching to me. I think Barnes is more so a situation as opposed to a usage. Yeah, you have targets on here. I'm looking at Josh Hoover's targets to Manjack. So you have targets on here. Eric McAllister saw 5 targets on the day, and the first one wasn't for the first 20 minutes of the game. Now, as far as other players go, as far as the negative side of it, because it wasn't all good, the fact that you didn't see them a lot is one of the bads. But Manjack and Dwyer were 2 of the lower guys. I think they were second and third on the list, or Manjack was the lowest and Dwyer was the second or the third lowest. In between them was Ben Taylor Whitfield, who that was kind of crazy because they gave him a pass grade, which means he either caught a pass or threw a pass. And I don't remember either one of those. So PFF is just a source. They are not the gospel. That's why we don't look them on Saturday, because this is just a way to interpret what you already saw. That's what I'll say. Anyway, Manjack, rough day. I look at him as a very steady and reliable receiver, and he just wasn't that on Saturday. He was unreliable. He wasn't steady. Him struggling, to me, was the greatest example of that team being rocked, of that team being rattled, because Manjack wasn't playing like himself. And then Dwyer just feels like he ain't did nothing recently. It's just strange. Like, it just feels like there was so much hype. I'm guilty. I was giving him all of the hype. I was ready to call him wide receiver 1, right? And he just felt like he disappeared. Maybe I jinxed him. That's the craziest jinx I've ever given out. I've given 1 game jinxes. I didn't give him like 4 or 5 game jinxes, because you look at the first couple games of the season, he was doing all right. The last couple of games of the season, he had 32 versus SMU, 42 versus Arizona State, 26 versus Colorado, 32 versus Kansas State. He's had no more than 3 catches in each of the last 4 matchups after having 9 catches versus North Carolina, 5 catches versus Abilene Christian. Now you're looking at 14 through the first 2 games. That's 3, 6, 9. Hair real fine. You had 3, 6, 9, 11 11 catches over the last 4 games, as opposed to 2 games in 14 receptions. So just real strange. But let's push forward to the defensive side of the ball as we talk about the safety tandem. And we're not really going to look at too much of the good. We're going to look at all of the bad. I'm sorry. Don't worry. I think tomorrow things could be Thursday, I think things could be better when we do our crossover with Cam. So Wednesday, I already know where we're going with Sarah, and it's not going to be that fun. So it's going to be fun for me, though, because it's going to be great content, but not fun to not positive. There we go. It's going to be fun, but it's not going to be positive. But let's get into it all as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, and Game Time is the only place that I get my tickets for anything. Want to go to a Monster Jam? Come on. You want to go to your Halloween themed game? The Mavericks are playing now. Go ahead, or about to start playing the regular season, already doing the preseason. If you're in Fort Worth, you may be able to catch some of the games in Dickies Arena. You go to the Cowboys game. The Rangers, no. But you have a bunch of games. Like, it doesn't matter. If you want to catch a flight somewhere, go there. They don't have to be sports. It can be ballet. It could be, like I said, the Monster Jam. It could be a theater play, right? They had the Wiz out there at Fair Park. I think they may still have the Wiz out there at Fair Park. So you go ahead. That is a couple of things that you could go do, and they're all on Game Time. Maybe you just want to go to the TCU Baylor game because it's this weekend. And you want to go see what Coach Dykes says is the biggest rivalry. Yeah, so this is fun. Go ahead and go to Game Time. Right now, if you use the code Locked On College, you get $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I want to look at the PFF side of the defensive side of the ball. I was interested because I didn't feel like the defense had a bad day. They just had a blah day. It just wasn't that good. It just wasn't exciting. Didn't really get you much. I thought that they had some stops. I thought they honestly held on for as long as they could, but it also didn't feel like the holding on. Once the bleeding started in the second half, it just, you kind of forget about what happened in the first. And it's just like once you started bleeding, you were hemorrhaging. Like, that's just how it went. You went from a little baby cut to just absolutely profusely bleeding everywhere. 2 of the players who graded pretty lowly are Bud Clark and Jamel Johnson. They aren't the lowest, right? But of players who's played 30, 40 snaps, they're the second and third lowest, only behind Devin Deal, who had a 62. And they said that he was, poor tackling, 2 missed tackles on the day. But Jamel Johnson and Bud Clark are interesting to me, and I'm going to keep it relatively brief for them. I like this tandem a lot, to be honest, but they do tend to find themselves around bad plays. And that's just strange to me. They make their share of good plays, so I don't want to boil them down to that. But it does feel like Bud Clark and Jamel Johnson tend to find their way to be around bad plays. And the reason I say that is because if you go by PFF, when they say targets, they mean who's the closest to the ball. As a matter of fact, I know one of the touchdowns they gave to Bud Clark was not Bud Clark's fault. I'm pretty sure that was the linebacker, whoever that was. I don't remember. But Bud Clark had his man in man coverage, saw the ball in the air, peeled off his man, got close, and they said, touchdown Bud Clark. That's not how that works. That is not Bud Clark's fault. PFF is not an exact science. Like I said, it is just a form of evaluation. And when you watch the game, sometimes you can say, I don't agree with that. Sometimes you can say that's objectively wrong. But you look at Jamel Johnson. He let up a 32-yard catch, in which I don't think that was his man, but he did come over the top, and he just got bodied, to be honest. He just got boxed out, and the guy was just too big. And the catch was on Bud Clark, was on Jamel Johnson. So there's that. But it just feels like they find themselves around touchdowns. Bud Clark finds himself around that touchdown. He lets up another touchdown that was clearly on him. Jamel Johnson lets up a touchdown in which he just got absolutely routed on an inside route. Like, it was bad. You could see it it was a ball that was like 15, 20 yards down the field. And you ever watch football enough, you've seen enough plays where you say, got him. You don't even need to see the receiver once the route's over. He passed the 10, 15 yards that the broadcast copy shows you, but you see him route his defender. You said, just look at him. Just look at him. Avery Johnson looked at him. Avery Johnson did. So I like this tandem, but I do feel like they find themselves in trouble in coverage. They're both really good tacklers. They both come downhill very well. And if you look at their grades, they're very similar, right? Jamel Johnson has a 60.9 defensive grade, but Clark has a 60.2. 60.9. I don't know if I said 69 or 60.9, but for Johnson, the 0.9. In run defense, Johnson had an 81.2. Meanwhile, Bud Clark had a 69.5. So there's a little bit of a difference there. You look at tackling. Johnson had an 87.7. Clark had a 78.5. You're looking at Jamel Johnson on coverage, where they both report 48.5. Bud Clark, 55.9. what you're seeing is they're in the same ballpark in every single avenue. A couple points different here and there. They overall have less than a point separating themselves as an overall grade, but run defense good, tackling good. Neither one had pressure grades this week, but coverage poor. And it just feels like oftentimes close to the line of scrimmage, they do a lot of damage. I think that Bud Clark is opportunistic. I think Jamel Johnson has developed some opportunistic traits this year, but all in all, I don't think they're bad in coverage, but they're not really good. They might be average in coverage. I feel like they're there a lot. I feel like they are there, but they don't make plays on the ball. It's strange. I like this duo a lot. And I think they could make a play. Like if they ever made a pass defense that was in a crucial moment, I wouldn't be shocked. But if they let up a touchdown, I wouldn't be shocked either. There's just too much area in between, right? Like I know some people like to keep it black and white where it's just one side and one side. Others, you look at a whole spectrum of colors. You look at just a 1 to 10. There's 8 numbers in between that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, that's what I thought. There's 8 numbers in between that to make sure I wasn't tripping. This is a lot of room for volatility, in my opinion. And I feel like both Bud and Jamel find themselves in that volatile area a little bit too much. They're either way over here, they're way over there. Sometimes they're in the middle. It's just too much for me. But on tomorrow, we'll have Sarah Smith on the show from KCEN, and she'll be breaking down with myself the hot seat that is Sonny Dykes. How hot is that seat? And we'll talk about some more stuff, including her stat of the week. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.